Professor George Wajackoyah is the Roots Party leader. He's here with us this morning, and good to see you. Good morning, Prof.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Salama sana.
Salama. Karibu sana.
It's a long time.
It has been. You've been busy.
Yeah, I should come for tea one of these days. I host you guys. You
For tea?
hosted me for a long time. I need to host you guys in any hotel of your choice
Okay.
for lunch.
It's on the record.
Definitely.
It's on the record. Karibu, thank you.
Yes.
Many things happening. And it's interesting that we come off a conversation whereby things have been a bit sticky in the country. And then we say that there are solutions to this, and there's perhaps some of those solutions that we'll be talking about today. But as usual, Dennis wants to welcome you with today's proverb.
Yes.
Thank
Our
you.
proverb today comes from Gabon, former French colony, country that is rich in oil, but despite the wealthy resources that they do have, inequality in terms of the gap between the rich and poor is really, really wide. But it's also part of the Congo Basin, which is part of the world's second largest rainforest after the Amazon. But the proverb we have this morning: no matter how long the log stays in water, it never becomes a crocodile. How would you interpret it?
When a tree falls on your mom, don't work it. Don't remove it from her.
Why?
There's no answers.
Okay.
We'll leave it at that.
I think we should.
We just leave it at that.
I think we should.
Yeah.
It's obvious, I mean, even as we start off, it's obvious that Kenya does not have a public transport system. You've been to many nations of the world. You can get along, or you can get where you're going really quickly with the public transport system. And what we mean that it is government run, government operated, government funded, essentially. But that you can get where you're going, and there's a public system. That doesn't take away from the private that happens. But by and large, governments have public funded transport systems. So they're government operated. So you can easily say that there's a public transport system. With the strike that we saw over the last couple of days, it's evident that that does not exist in Kenya. Is it necessary to have one in the first place? And if so, how do you go about it?
Kenya has the best public transport system. And the Kenya bus services. We also had the NYS public transport system. Had it not been because of mismanagement, I think we're almost equating the likes of New York metropolitan city transport. So we cannot say that we didn't. We had, but because of corruption, the whole thing came down.
Now, we look at a transport system that is funded by the public, and with that, then, what would that mean to the economy of the country? Because if you look at the other jurisdiction, the government says it is our responsibility to take the people to their places of work and back home in a system that is trusted, that is reliable, and that people can depend on, and is also affordable. So that when we come for the taxes, we have helped the citizens to generate the taxes. If we have the same ideology in Kenya, what would that do to the economy overall?
I will give you an example of the JKIA transport system. The moment you disembark from a plane, you are whisked in a bus to the immigration center. And if we had that kind of psychology, and assuming that those buses were public, then we could build on that. We don't have any complaint at the JKIA. Whenever you want to go out of the country, you pass through the immigration control. Either you're whisked to the plane by metro transportation system or not. Why couldn't we have even done the same elsewhere? We used to have Kenya bus. I was born a long time ago, and I've seen a lot of development in this country. I've been there during the generation of all presidents. You could call me a fossil. There was a time when Kenya transportation system was the best in East Africa. The East African Railways and Ports Authority, we had railway lines linking the coast to the interior. They are very reliable, available, affordable. We had even the waterway systems in Lake Victoria, which were available, reliable, and affordable. We had the Kenya Bus system, and we even still have the Kenya Bus Corporation. We had also the Kenatico system, We had also a time when Moi brought in the London taxes to ease congestion. The problem turned around when the whole system was politicized, where now every business person took a loan and brought matatus. And when Michuki came in and streamlined that particular industry, everything went okay. But as of the moment, it's actually the oil crisis.
So there seems to be crisis after crisis after crisis.
Yes.
So whether we're talking about a public transport system, or whether we're talking about fuel prices going skyrocketing, or whether we're talking about an economy that's downward facing, all of that seems to lead back to leadership. And we're at a time now where everybody's asking for a position of leadership. And we have to find ourselves asking the question about who would make it different if they were given a position or were given that mandate by people to lead. How would it be different? What would be done to say that now you can see something different happening?
First of all, you have to make our country or our people to realize that where there is an international global crisis, we don't politicize it like what's ongoing in the country today, where blame is shifted to the government. Sometimes we have to swallow our pride and speak the truth. Currently, in the 70s, we had the oil crisis. Then we had the Russia-Ukraine that brought in a crisis that brought in an oil crisis. And then the current issue, which is a global issue that has actually affected each and every nation that uses oil or relies on oil. Now, on that one, people ought to understand that if the crisis brings in oil shocks or test shocks, and which affects the global energy, whereby one country leads to war, and that war escalates into main oil-producing countries, like, for example, when Iran attacked Qatar and disputed its gas operations, when the Strait of Hormuz was closed, which made all the oil tankers not to have access, when the fossils or the fuel reservations were actually interfered with, then we come to Kenya and we find out that people do not want to look into that as a crisis. People now come out and say, "Whoa," and I'm not defending the government, but I'm looking at it from the international perspective. It's a global issue. It has affected Philippines oil reserves. It has affected the UK. It has affected the United States. Countries have increased oil because there was no way out. So this particular issue that we have today, even though it has been sensitized because of lack of knowledge or understanding, we should actually sometimes come and swallow our pride. We should not politicize and then put blame on something that is actually visible. But for the leadership part is very difficult to have a solution. We cannot say that we're going to elect so-and-so who will actually come in and solve this crisis. We need actually to have knowledge. We need to talk as a nation. We need to have a conversation as a nation so that we can actually know what to do. The issue of political leadership to come and lead us from the crisis to another place needs people who can actually understand the geopolitics and the international economic development. In that case, of course, we have to come up with a mechanism. We have to look at us and ask ourselves, what can we do in this nation? Must we relegate everything to somebody? Must we look at the current political system to try to come out of the crisis? So issues of which politician is going to bring us out of the crisis without us thinking about ourselves and putting down the ground and having it as a conversation is a problem.
Prof, it has been said that for us to have a solution even to the oil crisis that is there right now, one of the areas that we must look into is having reserves, internal reserves, because Kenya, as we speak right now, we do not have long-term reserves that will serve the country whenever these shocks do arrive. That is one part of it. But then again, there is also the fact that we are exploring oil within the country. Why not build a refinery? We know conversations are ongoing with regard to that. But when it comes to leadership, many say the landed cost for fuel in at the port of Mombasa is 100, but everything else is levies, which is now an act that is being implemented because it is law. From the leadership perspective, bearing in mind the shocks that the world is experiencing, should we then have conversations on how we can amend the law to make it easy for their citizens? Should that be the direction, perhaps, that many look at?
Definitely. The issue of looking at the law and amending the law without proper planning, economic development policy, is all futile. I will pose a question before I make comments. Nairobi metropolitan city has become a war zone in terms of infrastructure and logistics. Why would we come in and say that we need to improve Nairobi and develop Nairobi when all the infrastructure has gone wayward? Why can't we come up with a new city like what the Roots Party is proposing? We build a new city in a place like Isiolo because of its proximity to the northern and southern corridor, east-west corridor, and then build a properly regulated, a properly managed environment into a new city whereby you can actually ease congestion and develop a metropolitan system, rail system, road system, and air system that will absorb the increasing population. That's number one. Number two, why would we have a conversation on oil legislation when we know that the executive has the majority in parliament and they can at any time increase what they want to increase and pass it as a legislation? How comes that the same executive as we see today is the main guzzler abuser? You'll find that the government officials are allocated guzzlers. You'll find one official, for example, Minister for Internal Security or Transportation or what have you, having 10 cars, and all those cars are guzzlers. Why can't we start by telling these leaders to give us a refined example? In UK, where I've lived for so many years, and also the US, you'll find that the public scrutiny does not allow a state appointed official to misuse public funds. So we should start with the government. For example, State House operatives, when the president is passing into place, he passes with guzzlers. You can see about 50 guzzlers chasing one man. If you look at governors, they have taken the same. If you look at the ministers, so we should actually start with them first before they sit on the table wanting to regulate anything in terms of energy.
I hear you saying that there needs to be an overhaul.
Definitely, yes.
So it seems as though development is being sought after over things that exist, and perhaps you need to uproot some things and then lay bare. Would you say then that people have no business in new development at the moment, but either finishing what was there before or then rerouting what does not work? How would you go about it? We don't look at Nairobi, and we look at that as a particular example because people have tried and failed. But you can't have a city with a stature that Nairobi commands in the state that it is in today.
Well, let's look at the planning of Nairobi and start with the freeway. This, how do we call it, the superhighway? Why did we have to put a superhighway in Nairobi in the first place when we don't have a highway linking us to Nakuru and Mombasa, which is the main entry point, economic exit and entry point in this particular country? Why couldn't we have developed freeways? Look at the roads as they are built now in Nairobi, and you see how much wastage we have on the road designs. Why would we not take those energies away? Because I'm now told today that there will be another flyover. Is it flyover or metropolitan highway on Thika Road to somewhere in Kiambu? Is that not wastage? Are we not actually damaging and burdening the soil that is not even there when the city is sinking? Nairobi is the main place that we should actually make it as an example and try to move away and build new cities. We have plenty of land. Remove State House from Nairobi, put it somewhere like Nakuru. Remove Parliament from Nairobi, put it somewhere like Machakos. Remove some of this, like the Ministry of Agriculture headquarters is in Nairobi. Ministry of Health headquarters is in Nairobi. The people working there, the government officials working there, are actually burdening the taxpayers because of the infrastructure and logistics that they operate under. So what we are saying as Roots Party is like, look, this issue of Nairobi, whereby everybody's coming into Nairobi, sooner or later we're going to drown because of the changing ecological system. Let's move out of Nairobi and let us devolve functions into other areas so that we can come to this, to put this issue of energy down. We are also proposing that we grow hemp. Hemp oil is now being used, in fact, because of its clean clean air methods and what have you. Hemp oil is now being used in developed countries, and that would ease reliance on crude oil, which in itself has got environmental disasters. We can also move in windpipe. We have a lot of environmental echelons that can make us grow new and renewable sources of energy.
You speak of a change that is there, but you've also just taken us back to history when Kenya Bus was there and Nairobi had a working transport system that there was. That today, if we want a system that works, we already have examples. We have the blueprint that is there. There's a time we were given a story here on how you'd want to move from Buruburu to the CBD at 8 a.m. The bus would be there and there would be a board telling you when the bus would be there. If we are to fix the transport system in Nairobi, for example, we can do it. But is there the political goodwill to change that?
There is no political goodwill. And secondly, we don't need to go that way on your first proposal of the proximity between Buruburu and Nairobi and the time taken. We can tunnel underground. We can chamber the underground like we've done in London. London is a very small ground, but everything functions. We can introduce the metropolitan systems in Nairobi, have the underground and the overland buses that can ease congestion. We can introduce the train system if only we have proper planning. But the issue of matatus and the menace that comes with, the issue of motorbikes or border borders and the menace that comes with, and the kind of crowd that comes with it, will not make that thing go well unless it's properly regulated. And I believe that Michuki, wherever he is, he's actually crying because he left us with a very good transportation system, common sense, and some kind of reasonableness in what was going on at that particular time. But look at today. Everybody for himself. We'll find that the Minister for Transport, for example, and I'm not saying the current, may be having a pecuniary interest in the ownership of transportation system. The police, most of them own these matatus, so it's chaotic. But an oil crisis, of course, that's an international issue. But we have to regulate and come out and see what we can do, if at all we can do it, through proper planning, having our own engineers doing the roads. Like, look at the roads that the Chinese have built for us. If you look at the intersections, they're just an accident war zones. We can do these things properly, or we can get our military, our defense system. When they came to build Uhuru Park, look at what they did. Kenya Army, what battalion is that? Engineering battalion? Can be given responsibility to come up and design our roads and build them properly, other than having what we are having today. But the main issue, as you said before, is oil crisis, and they should look at what to do.
The countries of the world are facing the same thing at the moment, and that I don't believe that there's a country who relies on fuel in the same nature that Kenya does is not having a difficult experience either with getting the commodity or keeping the supplies constant with the current things that are happening. How they're able to deal with it may not result in high prices then being transferred to the people of the country. They may deal with it somehow else. And are we talking about decisive action here, where they say, this is how we choose to buffer the situation. This is how we decide that we are going to make it easier for people to survive. Is Kenya different, or is any country which chooses to raise the prices to these unbearable levels doing it differently? And I'm really at the place whereby leadership must be keen as to what is going to be done about what is a crisis situation that doesn't create a further crisis in the existence of its people.
Actually, you have dealt seriously on the issue of leadership. Leadership. And here we have a crisis. And the way to manage this crisis. Obviously, if you look into the so-called leadership that we have here, starting from the Kenyatta family, the Odinga family, the Moi family, and the Ruto family, you find out that they have interest in oil. The Uhuru owns the company that I'm not going to mention. The Railas have a stake in oil industry. The Rutos have a stake in oil industry. So is Moi. And they own the main oil companies. And imagine if they have pecuniary interest in their own companies, how do you expect them to to come up with the legislation which is not tainted? Because at the same time they have the majority of members of parliament who can pass and lobby for oil prices, and they control the system. That's where the problem is. But on this particular one, it is a global crisis which I cannot pin on them.
Yeah. Other jurisdictions have decided to look at it differently, and I'm going to give an example of what Ethiopia is doing. They started by ensuring that they build a new dam that is generating more power for them. And with that, then the government has decided intentionally to rework the city. You go to Addis today, and it's looking different. And with that as well, they've come up with a new transport system that is purely electric, and the government is investing in that. Why? Because they invested in power, so they have power to charge all these electric buses that they're putting into place. Should Kenya have a strategy around how they are looking into it, if you just look at what our neighbors are doing?
Yes, Kenya has a good law. The proposed Kenya Railways and Metropolitan Transport Act in 2027. I've looked at it very keenly. And if that is put into practice, I think the room for improvement could be there. And also I do not want to blame the government very much on this particular issue, because Ruto inherited a bankrupt economy, and nobody's talking about how much money Kenyatta removed from this country during that particular time. Let's look at how we can return back that loot that was taken by the Kenyattas when they are leaving the administration. And let's also look at the loot that has been taken during Ruto's time, so that we can actually build up infrastructure and have a transportation system that works. The monies are there, but there is no brain to work on that monies, and everybody at the moment is actually tunneled into looting what is remaining. So I do not want to speak politics today, because I've got my NDC on Saturday, and that's why I'm a bit laid down. But we shall give our policies on that particular day. As we sit down here as Roots Party, are looking into a vibrant change of leadership in 2027, and we shall come in with the experiences we have from outside the world. We shall come in with policies, especially infrastructural policies that work, which we shall actually have a conversation with the Kenyans at large to see what is viable. For example, now, different areas in this country have different modes of transportation. If you go to the northern part of the country, obviously, we have traditional methods of transportation, like the donkey transportation, the camel transportation, and people walking, which is something that should be put under consideration. But our main aim is to stop people from coming into the city. We need people to work from where they are and to build on what they have. So just like what the Europeans are doing. Europeans don't move to major cities unless there is a necessity. The Chinese do the same. The Japanese do the same. If you look at the Japanese oil policy, you'll find out that 70% of Japanese oil policy is owned by the people. And people have a stake. They speak on. You cannot raise fuel, even if there's an international crisis in Japan, without involving the stakeholders or the owners of that particular. We in Kenya, we are in a better position because we have lots of people who are even better than Japanese in terms of education. We can always sit down, educate our people, and actually tell them this is what we have, what you have to. This our constitution guarantees liberties on economic development, and stakeholder economy is what we need. So, like the raising of the fuel, the government ought to have come up with some kind of software approach. We are in a crisis. You know, there's a global issue going on. Don't worry, just bear with us. Oil prices are likely to rise up. It's that kind of laying the foundation ought also to have been, rather than just striking and putting 20% of increase on oil or 23.9 increase on oil without creating awareness. But anyway, it's a crisis. What do? We have actually to come out and look at it as Kenyans and say, look, what do? But when it's politicized, where politicians now come in and start now giving lies, like what I had yesterday, some politician talking about that Kenya does not import oil from Iran, when the Strait of Hormuz has been blocked and ships cannot go through. Those kind of lies, we should not buy them.
Okay. All of these things that we look at seem, again, I'm still going back to the leadership issue. Is it time for then Kenyans, because we talk about whether it's infrastructure, we talk about development, we talk about the economy, we talk about debt, etc., that somebody ought to be leading the charge to sort out some of these things, and that it needs to be deliberate in terms of a push to get things moving. So is it then, almost clear to say that you then need to look towards leadership to change some of these things? If you want to change, have a change in leadership. Is it the formula that works?
That's why I'm running for president. And that's why I'm going to be a benevolent dictator.
Okay.
And that's why I'm going to put those people who have messed up this country to where it is today to answer with special tribunals. And I'm actually not afraid to say that we shall hang some of these people.
The crisis that the country finds itself in, like you've alluded to, you come to Nairobi, our transport system is different from what would be the same in what you'd find in the far-flung counties, right? Those who are still using donkeys. But in a country that is taking care of its people, should we look at a Kenyan policy when it comes to matters to do with transport, so that as we decongest Nairobi and we are expanding, say, Isiolo, for example, that we are taking parliament there, that the same transport system that Nairobi is enjoying is the same that people in Isiolo are enjoying, that there are no disparities because we are serving the people of Kenya. Should we have a Kenyan transport policy that caters for everybody?
No. We should create Kenya into 8 regions, 8 states, 8 state regions. And each region should actually take care of its own policies depending on the needs of those people. I've just been in a place in Nigeria known as Akwa Ibom State. The governor of Akwa Ibom was my classmate, schoolmate, let me put it that way. And what I saw in Akwa Ibom, I was like, wow, what is going on here? The Akwa Ibom policy on oil is not a federal. It does not emanate from the federal government, Nigerian federal government policy. The state itself is in the oil zone. It has its own policies. The people participate in whatever they want to do, and what have you. Like now, as I said before, Kenya needs to rejuvenate itself to its former glory, where we had 8 provinces, and each province should actually be given a monotomy in legislating on its own infrastructure. When we come to the national policy should actually be devolved, so that each and every state in Kenya at that particular time when we take over can actually have its own needs. Kisumu, for example, if we have Nyanza state within Kenyan Republic, and the people of Nyanza should sit down in their parliament in Kisumu and legislate on what kind of transportation needs they have, giving the fact that we have traditional methods. We have Lake Victoria and also we have the trails that people have used for years. How do we go about what are the needs, what are the necessities, what are the logistics, where are the schools, where are the industries, what can we do for the needs of the people in that environment? So I believe in regional state-owned transportation system than government-owned. In the US, we have diversity, and you have also difference between the federal transportation system, which only touches on the federal instruments like airports, and we also have state transportation system. Like the state of New York has its own transportation system, which has also been borrowed by the metropolitan city of London, where the mayor of London brought in the state of New York transport expert, to actually help transshape London metropolitan system, whereby the various companies were given an upper hand to apply to provide and to be controlled because of the government stake in transportation system. But here, everything is mayhem. We have the Matatu Association. Everybody wants to speak. Everybody wants to hike their fares. People want to run own and run rowdy systems of transport. You get matatus with very loud music. Somebody has finished his job, he wants to go home, wants to talk to his family on the phone. You'll find that all that pollution is at the mercy of who? Therefore, all those things also should be taken into consideration.
Okay. So, you talk about Nairobi, Kenya, essentially, in terms of its jurisdictional area, territory, in this case counties, to be collapsed and going back to the regional system that it was, essentially, because Kenya was split into 8 regions before. What are the benefits of that time that could then be experienced today, for which you're then proposing?
At that time, Kenya was a central government oriented. The provinces were buffer zones. But what we are proposing is that if we have Rift Valley as a republic, or as a state within the Republic of Kenya, with its state capital probably in Eldoret or Nakuru, then counties will remain in the region. Now, what will happen is we shall have county regional assemblies, municipalities, and state assemblies. If I may give you the example of Narok, what does Narok produce? Narok produces water, because it's a water catchment area. It produces wheat. It's a tourist catch. It produces meat, hides and skins, and human resource. Now, the revenue collected from those 5 areas that I've mentioned should be debated in Narok County Assembly, and then let there be a very clear dichotomy between the county assembly with the state assembly on management and revenue collection, whereby if Narok collects its revenue from what I've said, it can apportion a particular percentage to the state of Rift Valley for the state operations, and the state will now be having revenues from each counties, so that they can actually do a model to take what they need, to develop what they have, and put the rest, send the rest to the federal government, the national government. Now, in Narok, if they take 40% revenue of what they have actually produced from their own state, then they can now come up and say, okay, what is it that we need to develop Narok? They can look into the priorities like hospitals, education facilities, transportation, and then now, earmark monies for development without any other. They could have their own metropolitan colleges and any county colleges like we have in the US, county police, county security system, county courts, county number plates. Like when I was in Akwa Ibom, you find the Akwa people saying, we are from Akwa, and if you look at the registration number plates of their vehicles, they are like, they are a symbol of nationalism to the people of Akwa. Narok could also have a say in that. But because they will be within the state, there will be a parameter between freeways, highways, and internal county roads, where monies will be distributed in accordance with the policies on instrumentalities. The same thing applies to the state council, the state parliament in Nakuru. And that way, we shall actually devolve functions to the counties and the state, and people will be in a position to make viable decisions rather than having a collective nation, whereby somebody in the coast wants to talk about transport, he has to wait for somebody in Nairobi to make that for him. That is not what we have in Roots Party. Our system will be develop properly. Abolish this issue of CDF, where members of parliament are abusing the monies. Abolish these issues of governors building mansions without accountability. Abolish these issues of monies being given at funerals by governors without accountability. Let everybody be accountable. And that's why we shall have special state tribunals to try those who have messed up with the people's monies, like we have in China. In China, if you mess up, you'll be tried by the state courts and the corrupt. That's why we don't have corruption in China and Greater Somalia in Africa. Those are the only two countries that you'll never hear of corruption. In Greater Somalia, you leave your monies there, and you can come tomorrow and find it the way you left it yesterday. We can do it in Kenya if we can. So the will of the people should be devolved, and we should have a conversation whereby this issue of somebody, and I'm deviating a little bit because you didn't. I knew that you're not going to ask me. The issue of the bigger the population, the greater the power. You have 5 million votes. You have 3. Now let's have proportional representation, like what you have in Australia, so that a Mijikenda can also have a dream of becoming a president in this country. This issue of people coming up and saying, "Oh, we are the biggest in the country. We have more votes." That means the country will go through this main drain, because they are the same people owning transportation system. They are owning logistics system. They are owning the economy of this country. Nothing wrong with that. But then when it comes to control, we must have equitable political transitions into systems, so that a president becomes just ceremonial, but the people's power is actually from the grassroots.
So are you saying that in Kenya, at the moment, that the president has too much power?
Definitely, yes, he has. He has too much power. Every day, the president is appointing people. That should not be the prerogative of the president. Let's look at the Indian system. Let's look at the BJP and the Prime Minister of India, and the President, and the Constitution of India, and the Article 1 of the Constitution of India, which says India belongs to the Indian people wherever they are. Kenya belongs to the Kenyan people wherever they are. They can come in, invest and have rebate. But the President is given too much power by the Constitution. And that's why Roots Party came up and say that we shall do away with some part of the Constitution and go back to the people to ask the people what exactly we need. Too much executive power is not good. Even me as a president, incoming president, I wouldn't want to have everything. I would maybe do the Kibaki way, hands off, but let people do it. But let's put proper mechanisms so that people can actually enjoy the freedoms that our forefathers fought for.
You've spoken about the eight state issue, which would be now devolution, 8 provinces. And with that, then one would look at what we already have, the 47 counties, and just ask the simple question, with the equitable share of revenue as well as the on-source revenue that they have, what is stopping these counties from implementing a transport system within their jurisdiction that works for them? Is it that we have a leadership that is not thinking outside the box, or is it that they do not have the interest of Monanchi first?
Is it devolution on finance? That the governors' hands are tight. They have to wait for money to come from up down. I have a friend of mine who is the governor of Taita Taveta, Mwadime. He came in as an independent on independent ticket, and because he can't sing properly, Taita County, Taita Taveta. Do you ever hear about it or anything in Taita? They are starved completely because of the constitution that we have. We don't want counties to wait for money to come from up. We need counties to be the ones giving, but we need counties to be giving to the states, to have a proper constitutional mechanism that will make the state to be the epic center of development, and counties to be the resource center for those states. But under the circumstances, definitely governors will continue stealing, And once they have finished their 2 terms, they want to come back as senators so that they can now police corruption that they have been involved in. It's all myopic. And when Ruto's party says that we shall change the constitution or do away with the constitution, people say, but where will we go? We can work with decrees. Yes.
Presidential decrees?
Yes, definitely, if I'm the president.
But you've just said that you want to take away power from a president.
No,
how would a president come in and now
when there's a
prefer
vacuum,
decrees?
When there's a vacuum, that time when there's a vacuum, whereby we are doing away with the constitution, we shall need a decree of transition during that particular time until Kenyans come up with the new proposals within a short framework so that we don't actually give the president too much powers for too long. Yeah.
Kenya has an implementation problem. Kenya has a behavioral problem when it comes to money in terms of expenditure. And unfortunately, this expenditure operation is in the hands of a few. The implementation metrics also is in the hands of a few. What would change that? Because if the things that you talk about need an implementation, and a lot of times you have a public service that moves from administration to administration, largely, how would you solve an implementation issue, even before we get to a debt one?
We cannot solve an implementation issue when corruption is topping the table. We need, first of all, to deal with the corruption, and then we come to implementation. We need also to involve men and women in uniform in the military in part of this. And my plan is, once we finish dealing with the corruption, I'll call in members of the army to work with civilians, to have that discipline. Yes.
I mean,
in Nigeria, it happens.
In offices, in ministries?
Yes.
No, I'm saying, how would you do it in Kenya?
Yes.
Which change the constitution, and you have members of the defense forces to come and work for the nation, because that is their prerogative. If you go to the US, there is also that policy where members of the armed forces are called to come and work with civilians. Things will be straight when you have them. In Nigeria, things are working now because the current systems in Nigeria has actually intervened members of the armed forces. In Uganda, the UPDF has parliament with members of the armed forces sitting with it. We need disciplined men in every sector of society.
I mean, one asks the question, if you look at the Constitution of Kenya 2010 today, you look at a constitution that describes how we should live with each other, what we ought to do. Chapter 6 of the Constitution is there. So we talk about a constitution that has medicine for our problems. Is our problem implementing the Constitution, or is our problem so bad that we need a new Constitution? If we implement the Constitution today, would we say that Kenya is headed on the right note?
First of all, what is that Constitution? The only important thing in that Constitution is the preamble, with the people. The Kenyan's Constitution is copy-paste. 269 pages, if I'm not wrong, approximately. Whereas the US Constitution is only 8 pages. 8 pages. It has only been amended 14 times in 760-something years of independence. If I may ask you, was this constitution constituted properly within the Kenyan population? Were people given enough time to understand what the constitution was? Was it translated in those vernaculars that people could read and understand what they were getting into? Or was it a political issue where we had the bananas and the oranges? Politicians going to say it will be like this. Like in Luo Nyanza, for example, whatever Raila said was the constitution. And it was indeed. Somebody will say, Raila Wachonango. When you took it to him, Raila Wachonango. If Raila has said it's okay, it's fine. The Luya people. My grandfather, if he was alive, wouldn't have known what a constitution is. This is a paper which is a process. It takes years to inject into the system. We ought to have gone step by step, and we would have had a transitional period of 15 years. The period we had, I think, was 1 year or 6 months, and then it came bam. And if you look at it, some parts of that constitution, it really talks well. And it was copied from the US, UK, South Africa, and put together by experts who had no brains, bringing in people who do not understand the needs of the people on the ground. They have gone and they have come back, and then you see them clapping and handing over to the president. This is what you have collected. No. We had parliamentarians like Shikuku who had their own version. But if you see how the politicization of the constitutional formation was, it was just horrible. It was an elite constitution. We need people-driven constitution like what you have in India. India's constitution is divided into two, the Harijans and the Brahmins. And this is tailored alongside their religious beliefs, which they have accepted, where they say that the president of India will be a ceremonial president, but he must come from the Harijans, the underdogs, the black Indians, the untouchables. Whereas the prime minister must come from, depending on their religion, and people actually had lived with that religion for centuries in their own customary systems, and they accepted to be driven by their religious faith and what have you. And that's why you see, when you read and do research on subaltern studies and constitutionalism in India, you'll find out that India's constitution is the most basic instrument. Even hawkers have rights to run. It gives hawkers rights to elect themselves. It gives chaiwalas rights to elect their representative in local assembly. The current Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, was a chaiwala. He used to sell tea on the streets. And he used to fight for tea sellers on how to get clean water, tax rebate, milk. And that's why they elected him to the regional local assembly. From there, he became the chief minister of the state. And from there, he became the Prime Minister of India. And you can see how the Indian people have transitioned into who they are today. Now, if you look at the Chinese constitution is based on communism. We masses, we own. China belongs to us. But in Kenya, it has become individualistic, where you get a politician wanting to cut off land everywhere. You go to National Park, mashamba iko hapo. Ukienda huku, unaiba kila kitu. That is why I'm saying these people, let's give them a short period. When we take over, they will all be answerable.
Okay.
So hii constitution yetu, I still say, wengine wataniambia atu wewe ujui, tutafanya nini? I have 17 degrees. Recently, I just wrote my book, which is celebrated in Congress, which is being used as a reference in the Congressional Committee on Immigration. I'm a Kenyan. I'm a proud Kenyan. Now, if there is brain drain and brain drain, now when we come back here, people don't want to utilize us because they think that we know better than they do. Give us a chance. We build the country, not you. But if you are giving me a job to come and build you with your ego, so stay with it. And that's why we are talking to Kenyans and saying, wait, persevere, time will come, let us sit down, let us see what we can do for this country. But if you want, we can continue. If you don't want, remain in poverty, remain in corruption, remain that way. It will have nothing to do with me.
Do you think, based on what you've just said, and even as we wind this down, there are currently conversations around changing the way things happen, and that means that people would have to come together? Would you work with other political factions? Would you work with other people and say, well, maybe if I wouldn't be president, perhaps that we can come together to ensure that these policies, so you would be open to working with other groups of people?
Mwangi has just been in here. He's invited me for his NDC. Have invited him. If Ruto wants us to work together, we shall work. This nation is bigger than us. The current system that we have, pegged on your question, the current crop of politicians we have today are the blame politicians. Everyone wants to be the president. Number two, some of these fellows have not come up to sit together like we are sitting today to have a conversation on developing this country. They have not come up with a blueprint. I did ask them after Raila's death, my so-called friends in the opposition. I said, okay, here we are. Can we have a secretariat? And can each and every political party contribute its views towards this secretariat? And can we thereafter have a committee of experts to work on a paper so that we can actually start a conversation with Kenyans? You know what they told me? Kwenda huko wewe ujui. But most of them sit, and I'm not blaming them, wanakaa mahali usiku, mchana, wanaongea, wakitoka hivyo, wakiwa kwa hiyo conference wanasema mimi nitakuwa minister, wewe utakuwa speaker, wewe utakuwa hivi. Alafu in the evening they are on top of the vehicle abusing Ruto. I have no business abusing Ruto. Ruto is the president of this country. I could also be in the same shoes. Would I like to be abused? No. Ruto's children were with me in Kenya School of Law. Nick was my schoolmate in Kenya School of Law. If I meet with Nick and have been abusing his father, how would it be? So they have individualized the political system. So what is the difference between them and Ruto? that we want to remove. Let us come up with a consensus. If the president wants, we are still here. We can sit down and say, okay, this country is greater than us. Can we work out a formula regardless of who is going to be the president? And I will say yes. But I'm not going just to run like a headless chicken because I'm lying to the people I'll do better, yet I cannot give up. This ambition is what's killing us. If somebody came in and said, Professor, can we work as a team? So long as it's doable and it's understandable, we shall work for this nation.
Okay.
I need to go to Rift Valley to campaign. I need to go to Nyanza, to Kikuyu land to campaign. But now if there is this mathematics of lete yako, we cannot go into that hierarchy of numbers, tribalism. I say no. And that's why today I'm sitting down and said, had I run back into this is what I will be saying today. And that's why I remained neutral. I am neutral. There's one term this way and two terms. I'm the one, whoever is dissatisfied this way can come this way.
This other side can come this way.
If Ruto wants us to talk, we can talk. There's nothing wrong with that.
Professor George Wajackoyah is the Root Party leader, and the NDC is coming up on Saturday. There probably will be a lot more that we'll hear coming after that. Thank you for coming. There are many things that have come out today, and we really appreciate you sharing a lot of those insights. Looking forward to the next time, but also what will come out of all of this.
Just allow me something about my NDC.
Let's go.
I've invited everybody.
Okay.
I've invited all the political leaders in the opposition, and I've also invited the government.
Okay.
We need to sit down and let them come and air their views.
Okay.
That's why we are taking neutrality. Thank you.
It's a different kind of NDC where everybody from other parties are invited to this one.
Yes.
All right. Good morning.
Even the president.
I'm going to pass 9.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.